Hey everyone, my name is James and welcome back to Chippy Gaming. So on March 19th, Chippy Gaming will actually be turning 10 years old, meaning I've spent 41% of my entire life making videos here on this channel. So to celebrate that amazing milestone, I really wanted to do something big, something that I've never managed to pull off before. Now, as you all know, I love Terraria, I play it every day, but one thing I've never managed to do is a hardcore run of Terraria. Back in December on Chippy's couch, I tried my very first Hardcore Master Mode run, and unfortunately, it came to a pretty rough ending. Let me out of here. Oh no! Oh my god! No! Christ! Now, for those that don't know, Hardcore is an option that you can tick when creating your Terraria character, and essentially, if you die permanently. You can still play on the world, but why would you ever want to? So to celebrate 10 years of Chippy Gaming, I've put together this mini-series that goes over my complete adventure in Master Mode Hardcore. But before we get into it, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to go down there and give it a big fat thumbs up, and while you're at it, why not subscribe to Chippy Gaming? This year, we're trying to become the first Terraria channel to hit 1 million subscribers, and with your help, it's entirely possible. So strap in, maybe grab some popcorn as we go over the first part of our Terraria adventure in Hardcore. Let's begin. So our adventure began, like it always does, by making a brand new character. However, this time, we're clicking the Hardcore option, which does mean if we die, the character is permanently dead and we can never use it again. So we've got to be very careful. I made a brand new world. It's Master Mode, Medium, and Corruption. And I called it 10 years to celebrate 10 years of Chippy Gaming on March 19th. So here's our brand new world. We got Ryan the guide, and we even have these nice looking trees. I was even fortunate enough to get a lemon. A lemon is a nice find at the start of the game, mainly because your life regen is basically non-existent without a food buff in Master Mode. So a lemon gives you just a nice little bonus. So the first thing I do at the start of every hardcore run is I make a house. Now I do this for NPCs, of course, but I also do it so that I have somewhere safe to hide if I actually need to use a recall potion and come back to the surface. Especially if you're coming back at night, it's good to have an area already built to hide in. I then faced the very first foe of the series, this blue slime, and this will actually give you a pretty good idea of how quickly things can turn bad in a hardcore run. Every time this slime hits me, it does 20 damage, meaning in 5 hits, the character would be dead for good. Now, this is a blue slime. It's all very manageable, but you get a couple of them, and you runs over very quickly. So, just to the right of our starting base, we actually have a nice natural cave opening. And I will say, this is a very positive sign that you have a good Terraria world. It's always good to use these to descend slowly into the caverns and try and gather as many pots as you possibly can. Pots have torches, they have shurikens, they also have recall potions and sometimes some natural buffs as well. So this was perfect. Just after that, we found a second chest, and the good thing about this one is that inside was a shine potion. I really like to use these at the start of a run, mainly because that way you don't really have to think about torches for a little bit. Now, as you can see, it's very easy to get bombarded by enemies in a hardcore run. You've got to be pretty alert. I wasn't being alert here, but what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to gather any natural ore I can find. And then I find a nice pile of cobwebs. A really good tip is to try and gather as many cobwebs as possible right on your first day, and this is so that you can make a bed, because with 1.4 you can now sleep in Terraria, so when it gets to those boring long nights, sleep them away rather than being tempted to go outside and kill zombies. Now, this is something I'll do regardless of the playthrough. I always try and take a little bit of time to make some flaming arrows. I personally like to use bows right at the start of a Terraria adventure, and with flaming arrows, you're going to deal a lot more damage, and they're also a great way of just firing out in front of you and seeing what's about because they give off so much light. But then after that, I found my very first heart crystal. This was awesome. and I even found Hermes boots. Like, this is going to be the best combination of heart and chest I've ever seen. So for my first night, what I decided to do was get organized. I started dumping away some of the materials that I didn't need inside of chests. I also went ahead and made a loom and got some silk, and that is just so that I can make the bed that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, sleeping in Terraria is a game changer. When replaying older versions of Terraria, I'm like, how did I play 9 years of Terraria without this feature? You know what, Minecraft fans, they had it good and we never knew. So for my second day of Hardcore Terraria, what I decided to do was actually do a little bit of exploring in the world. But to do that, I decided we'd make the silver bow and actually upgrade our firepower. A silver bow is great, a gold bow is even better, so I'm going to be working on that soon. But yeah, since I had the Hermes boots, I thought, you know what, it's probably going to be pretty safe to go and check out the world. Now, to the right of our base, I actually found the snow biome, which is exactly what I was hoping for. The best part about icy arrows is that they deal more damage than flaming arrows, and they also work underwater. So if you're in a tense situation underwater and you can't see, fire a couple of these out, you'll probably kill the enemies faster, and you'll have better visibility. So just after that, I managed to find a giant living tree. Now, what I was really hoping for was a finch staff. It'd be great to have a nice little starting summon, even though they don't deal too much damage. But straight away, you can see me move my recall potions into the hotbar. And this is because if you're unfortunate enough to encounter a gnome in a living tree, it can mean instant death. Gnomes deal so much damage, and because you don't really have that much jump speed at the start of the game, it's really easy for a gnome to take you out. So that's a really good tip at the start. Make sure you're prepared if a gnome is going to attack you. It's really not worth dying that way. So, just next to the living tree, I managed to find a second natural cave entrance, but I did something that you should never do in Hardcore Terraria. I just jumped off the side of a cliff. I don't know why I did this. It dealt 79 damage, so if I'd already been damaged at that point, that would have been the run over. I'm going to try and point out as many mistakes as possible, just so that you lot can possibly learn from them. So it turns out that this natural cave entrance actually leads into the underground ice biome, and once again, I did something that I do regret. I fell onto thin ice. Now, I was lucky that my fall wasn't too bad, but that's a really easy way to die in Hardcore, so just avoid that if possible. Surprisingly though, I did push on into the underground ice biome. I usually don't do this, but it paid off in my favor because I managed to find our second life crystal, which is awesome. The more life crystals, the better in a Hardcore run. This is something that you should prioritize if you can. Although it's a bit of a gamble, you don't really know where life crystals are going to be. But I managed to get the third one as well, and as you can see, I'm already using the umbrella to descend down slowly. Now, I ended up in a pool of icy water. One thing I will say is don't fumble around in icy water. If you can, recall out of there as soon as possible. It's not worth ending a run because you can't breathe. It's totally avoidable. So before the second night, what I decided to do was build some more NPC homes. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because we're going to need certain NPCs later on, but now that we have a life crystal, we're actually going to be able to get the nurse. So what I decided to do was set my spawn point with the nurse, and then that way, if I recall home, I'm going to feel a lot more safe, and I actually do this a lot throughout the adventure. So, after some new homes on the surface, I decided to head back underground and check out what the world had to offer. Now, I managed to find a minecart track, and my biggest bit of advice here is go slow. These have traps hooked up to them more often than not. Ones like explosive traps, boulder traps, dart traps. It's really not worth it. Just go slow. But moving on from the minecart, I used my umbrella once again to slowly descend downwards. This gave me enough time as well to look ahead and see if any traps were placed on the floor. Traps are a real killer in Hardcore, like I can't stress that enough. And I managed to find this nice little house that actually borders on the marble biome. The first thing I did was block it off, and that's because enemies in the marble biome are pretty intense when you're starting out, but I managed to find some gravitation potions, which is an absolute must-have. If we can get something that negates our fall damage, we're going to be in a lot better of a position. I carried on exploring though. I got some more accessories in chests, and I also found some more life crystals. But before pushing my luck, I decided to use a recall potion and head home. Now that we're back home, it's time for some quick upgrades, and then we're taking to the sky. Now, I was really lucky that I had a couple of floating islands in my world, and they all had good loot. The very first one I got was the fledgling wings, which means we won't have fall damage and we can fly a little. The second chest I found was the shiny red balloon, and if you know me, this is actually one of my favorite accessories in Terraria, and it's really good for Skeletron. The third chest had inside a Star Fury, which is an awesome pre-hard mode sword, and then the final one just gave me another set of wings, which is good because I'm basically just going to sell them. So now that we know we're not going to die from fall damage, we have life crystals and a golden bow, it's time to start the next chapter of my plan, which is getting jungle armor. To me, this is one of the best armors you can get at this point in Terraria, but to get it, you have to be kind of careful. So if you decide to tackle the jungle in hardcore, my real advice is take it slow. If you find a man-eater, for example, stay well away. These things deal an incredible amount of damage, but really just bide your time. It takes a really long time to kill these, but it's always going to be worth it. Same with jungle slimes. Don't engage with a jungle slime. Try and bait it, try and trap it. Do anything you can do so that you can damage it and it can't damage you. And then do the same thing to hornets as well. I just want to show you real quick what not to do. Here I thought I was safe because the man-eater was almost dead. But as you can see, he dealt over 100 damage, meaning at this point, I would only need to be hit twice for the entire run to be over. So, like I said, bide your time, keep your distance. It's not worth ending the run over a man-eater. One of the things I really like to do in the jungle is actually create my own tunnels. It takes forever to do this, but it's great because often you'll find that enemies are trapped somewhere close to your tunnel. You can get close, start to damage them, start harvesting the ingredients you need, but you know that you're going to be doing it safely. If you have a hunter potion, this makes it way easier because if you have a man-eater, for example, you're actually going to be able to see him coming from much further away. So it took me quite a while to tunnel here, but I managed to get my very first jungle chest. Now, inside was the Staff of Regrowth. This is actually one of the items I was looking for. The Staff of Regrowth is awesome, especially in a run where you're going to use a lot of herbs and a lot of buffs. Make sure you go and grab a Staff of Regrowth. Now, the other item we are looking for here is the Boomstick, but we'll be coming back later to pick that up. So, after a good amount of time in the jungle and plenty of life crystals, we now had enough ingredients to make a full set of jungle armor. Now, even though I'm not using a mage weapon right now, the jungle armor is awesome because it took the player from 2 defense to 21 defense, which is really handy if we run into a bad situation. Before moving on, I decided now would be a good time to spruce up our little home base since we're going to spend quite a lot of time here. So the first thing I did is gather up a bunch of clay. Because we don't have the dryad, we don't have planter boxes, so we're going to need clay pots if we want to work on some of our herbs. I then took a little bit of time to start sprucing up some of the houses. You don't really need to do this. I did this for me so that everything looked a little nicer. I then went and organized all of our items into a bunch of chests, which I actually find pretty important in a hardcore run. I want to know in a pinch if I need an item, I'm going to be able to find it. Say, for example, an event happens that you're not expecting. It's a good idea to know where you placed that bucket of lava so that you don't get overwhelmed quickly. So the next morning, a traveling merchant showed up, and this was a really good opportunity to actually start buying some food. One thing I haven't done in this run so far is any fishing. That is something I do regret a little bit. I feel like I should have started that a little bit earlier, but I grabbed a bunch of food so that we had just some nice passive buffs. I then decided it was time to start smashing shadow orbs. Now, the reason I'm doing this is so that we can get the arms dealer. Like I mentioned earlier, we do need a boomstick, so we're going to need the arms dealer if we want to buy any sort of ammunition. Now, when I headed home, I saw that we have an evil presence watching us. Now, if you've ever seen me do one of these videos before, you know exactly what I did. I got straight to work on building a nice long platform. So long as you have a nice long platform and Hermes boots, I find that the Eye of Cthulhu is not a real problem. However, this is a hardcore run, And I think things went a little bit too far, and I'm pretty embarrassed that they did. For one, I didn't use any buffs. That was really foolish, even though I just spoke about the fact that I've organized all of my chests. But I used a gold bow, and I also used icy arrows. But one thing I didn't really prepare for is just how rampant the actual fight was going to be. Now, I will say, if I'd have gone ahead and made a regen and an iron skin potion, I know for a fact that when it came down to the end of the fight, when it was hitting me rampantly and dealing 30 to 50 damage each time, I would not have gotten down to 7 health. That is right. On the Eye of Cthulhu, I almost let the run completely end. I can't believe I actually did this. I'm so glad that we didn't die here. I would have been eternally frustrated. But yeah, with that, the Eye of Cthulhu was thankfully defeated. I then took a little bit more time to build some more homes. This is something that I just do passively all throughout my adventure. I quite like having a nice little village. I feel like it's good for protection, you know? NPCs on both sides of your spawn point. I know they don't do a very good job of fighting, but at least you can hear them fighting enemies, and then you know something is coming. This is a little bit better in hard mode, but it's also good because I actually wanted the demolitionist, and I also wanted the arms dealer. Now, one tip I want to share here is if you get the chance to have the demolitionist before the Goblin Army, treat yourself to a couple of stacks of grenades. I feel like grenades are probably the best weapon at this point in the game to deal with the Goblin Army, because unless you have a full stack of Jester arrows, most weapons are single firing, but when you're dealing with a large mob of enemies, having a grenade is really awesome, and it actually helped me out later on when I wasn't expecting to fight it when it showed up. Since we now have the Dryad, I also decided to buy some planter boxes. This is once again in a pursuit to just give myself an infinite amount of herbs so that I never have to panic whenever I want a buff that I actually need. After all that though, it was back to the jungle for me to try and gather some remaining life crystals, some accessories that I may have missed out on, but most importantly, the Boomstick. I had it in my mind when doing this run that the Boomstick was going to be the weapon I actually used for Skeletron. Now, I will say a demon bow that you get from the Eye of Cthulhu and some good arrows will probably do Skeletron just fine, but I find the Boomstick to be the best weapon, at least for me, because of the spread of the bullets. It's a little bit more forgiving if your accuracy isn't the most amazing thing. So here we are, I found a nimble Boomstick, and with that, I only need one more item before I'm ready to take on Skeletron. That one item is going to be the Cloud in a Bottle. So with a Danger Sense potion in hand, I decided to go and check out the Caverns once again, and I managed to find a dead man's chest. Now, if you've never seen one of these before, these are extremely brutal, and it's a good reason to not just randomly open any chest that you find. They have 3 boulders, they have explosives connected to them, and dart traps. So this is where a Danger Sense potion comes in big, but they actually have good loot inside still. This is actually where I got my Cloud in a Bottle, so I was really thankful that I actually managed to find it. So at this point in the run, I have every single thing I would have ever possibly wanted. It's now time to start working on getting myself a water bolt. So what I decided to do is, even though I wasn't ready to fight Skeletron quite yet, I went there in preparation and just made a nice long arena. Now, for me, I find a nice singular platform is good enough for Skeletron, but in my world, my dungeon was right next to the corruption biome. So what I decided to do was take that platform and extend it really far off to the right. And this is just so corruption enemies won't be showing up randomly during my fight, because if you get knocked around and knocked into Skeletron's skull, it's basically the end of the run. After that though, it was back to world maintenance, and I decided what I was going to do is build a nice elevator. Elevators are great not only for getting to hell fast, but they're also a lot safer than taking a bunch of random caverns down. And I actually like them because in hard mode, when you need a bunch of hard mode ore, I usually find if you have a elevator, you have a better chance of finding them just off to the side. So the next morning, I was actually greeted with the Goblin Army. Now, this is something that I wasn't necessarily looking to do at this point, but it is something that you're going to want to make sure you do in pre-hard mode, just so that you can get the Tinkerer's Station and actually get yourself a pair of Spectre boots. Now, with the grenades that we bought earlier, this event wasn't too hard, but I would recommend maybe just getting a food buff so that you have more life regen, because a couple of arrows will take you out at this point in the game, especially if you have less health than I did. One big thing I want to point out right now, and if you see somebody in the comments talking about this, you better set them straight. NPCs will drop tombstones when they die in Hardcore. This is so the player has the chance to get all of the items from a graveyard. So if you see a tombstone, don't be like, James, why'd you fake the run? I didn't fake the run, all right? It's from the NPCs, all right? Not a lot of people know about this, but yeah, when I did my Hardcore Let's Play, this came up all the time in the comments. One thing I really love about Terraria 1.4 is these giant blue mushroom biomes. Not only are they awesome to look at, but they're also really good to find the goblin. I find if you slowly descend into them, more than likely, your goblin will probably end up here. This is where I actually go every time I want to find one now. So I picked up a pair of rocket boots, I got the Tinkerer's Station, and it's now time to start combining some accessories. So I ended up making the Cloud in a Balloon, an accessory I really love. I also made Spectre boots, and I even made some climbing gear just so that we can turn that into the Master Ninja gear later on. But with that, we are definitely ready for Skeletron. So at this point in the game, we have a full set of jungle armor, we have a set of wings, we have some great combined accessories, we've got great buffs because we took the time to actually set up a herb farm, we got a boomstick. This is really the most ideal situation you can ever have. Now, for Skeletron, my tips are always the same. Try and take out the hands at the same time. This is so that you don't get bombarded with some of those flying skulls while you're still trying to take out the hands. And then once you've done that and you just have the skull, what I recommend doing is moving in a circle around the skull. And this is so those flying skulls won't actually be able to hit the player. Just really make sure that you keep your distance though, because if you get knocked into the skull, like I've mentioned before, that is going to be the end of the run. Now, Skeletron is finally defeated. We got ourselves the pet. This is my new favorite pet in Terraria. Unfortunately though, no Chippy's couch, but we did get the bone glove. I quite like the bone glove. I left this on for a really long time, maybe too long. But the reason we are here is to get the water bolt. That is going to be the conclusion of part 1, because the water bolt is by far one of the most important weapons you can get if you want to take my approach to the hardcore run. Now, we are also here for another very important reason, but we're actually going to talk about that in part 2. But with that, I managed to find the water bolt. This is the weapon I'll be using for the rest of pre-hard mode. A really fantastic weapon in general, and a really great weapon even when you're approaching the start of hard mode. But with that, that is the end of part 1 of my hardcore adventure. So keep an eye out, because in a couple of days here on Chippy Gaming, we're going to be putting out part 2 of the Master Mode Hardcore run. And then the conclusion, the final episode, will actually be going live on the channel's anniversary, the 10-year anniversary, on March 19th. Alright, so that about does it for part 1 of this adventure. Remember, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give it a big fat thumbs up. And if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe to Chippy Gaming. You don't want to miss the next part, because that's where things start getting a little bit more wacky. Alright, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.